They told her it would be routine, a standard high, altitude low opening training run, nothing more. Captain Mara Cade had done hundreds of them, through storms, through darkness, through enemy fire. She'd jumped from planes with one engine smoking, from helicopters that rattled like dying machines, and once from a transport aircraft whose wing had been torn open by shrapnel. If anything, the simplicity of today's mission felt like a break. That alone should have been her first warning. She walked across the tarmac with her helmet tucked under her arm, her boots crunching on the gravel as the Black Hawk waited with its rotors spinning lazily, like it was half asleep. The sun was only a faint smear of orange across the horizon, not yet ready to warm the cold morning air. A breeze tugged at her sleeves and whipped her ponytail across her cheek. She ignored it. She was thinking about the briefing, short, vague, oddly rushed. The 3 Rangers assigned to fly with her stood by the helicopter ramp, pretending not to watch her approach. The youngest, barely 22, kept his head down as if the gravel had suddenly become fascinating. The other 2 whispered to each other and then stiffened when she came close. Mara didn't know them well, and she hadn't needed to. She led her own team. Today she was here as an evaluator. Their job was simple: complete the jump, follow instructions, stay alive. But their energy was wrong, off, like they were waiting for something. "You 3 ready?" she asked, climbing into the helicopter. "Yes, ma'am." They chorused, a little too quickly. She frowned but said nothing. Sometimes rookies were just nervous. Sometimes they were intimidated by her record, her rank, her reputation. She buckled in, checked each of her straps, and tightened her chest harness. Everything functioned exactly as it should. That was her second warning. When something dangerous is coming, the world often goes unnervingly smooth right before it shatters. The pilot gave a thumbs up. The Black Hawk lifted, its rotors thundering, the ground dropping away beneath them. As they ascended, Mara scanned the tree line, the mountains, the glittering sliver of river below. A perfect morning for a jump. Too perfect. She glanced at the men. They were not talking now. They were locked in some silent tension, darting quick glances toward her, then toward each other. The youngest looked pale, his knee bouncing as if he were restraining panic. Mara leaned slightly toward him. "You good?" she asked. He flinched. "Yes, ma'am, just cold." "It wasn't cold up here." "Not enough to shake someone like that." Mara shifted her attention to the other 2. Classified files flicked through her mind. Names, histories, behavioral notes. None of them flagged as unstable. None had disciplinary marks. But something wasn't right. The Black Hawk leveled off. The red jump light inside the cabin glowed faintly, washing their faces in dim crimson. Wind poured in through the open side door, snapping at their uniforms. Mara stood, adjusted her harness again, and stepped toward the door. She was the instructor. She always jumped first. Behind her, one ranger murmured, "Do it now." She didn't react at first. The rotors were loud, and she thought she imagined it. Then she caught a reflection in the helicopter's glass. 2 silhouettes shifting their weight, crouching lower like predators preparing to strike. She spun halfway around. "What did you just?" Hands slammed into her back with explosive force. Not one shove, 3. The world flipped. The edge of the helicopter door spun past her as she stumbled backward into the rushing void. She reached for something, anything, but her fingertips closed around air. The roar of the rotors vanished instantly, replaced by the violent scream of wind tearing against her body. She saw their faces for a split second, shock on one, satisfaction on another, guilt on the third. Then the helicopter lurched upward away from her as she plummeted. Mara's body tumbled, somersaulting wildly, the horizon becoming a blur of sky, earth, sky, earth. She felt the instinctive dread seize her stomach, but worse was the realization that hit her harder than gravity. They pushed her. Intentionally, calmly, As if disposing of her was just another item on their checklist, her hand shot to her harness and froze. The ripcord wasn't there. Her parachute was gone. A cold bolt of understanding ripped through her. This wasn't sabotage. This was an execution. The ground rushed up to meet her, but Captain Mara Cade wasn't dead yet. Instinct. It was the only thing between Captain Mara Cade and the kind of death most people couldn't imagine. Training didn't erase fear. Only fools believed that, but it carved out a space inside the terror where logic could still breathe. And in that thin, razor-edged space, Mara forced herself to think. Her body spun violently through the freezing air, the sky and earth blurring into streaks of blue and green. The wind was a living thing, clawing, punching, screaming past her ears with the sound of a freight train. She willed her arms open, spreading them wide, trying to stop the tumble and gain even the smallest control. Her muscles burned as she fought the rotation, her shoulder blades tightening, her fingers numb from the sheer force of the fall. Breathe, level, look. She forced her eyes to stop darting wildly and lock onto the world around her. The helicopter was a distant black shape now, shrinking fast, becoming one speck of betrayal in an endless sky. They thought she'd be dead before she hit the ground. They counted on it. They had been so sure that no one survived a fall like this without a chute. But Mara had no intention of dying just to prove them right. She flattened her body, arms out, legs slightly apart, reducing the spin and turning chaos into glide. It wasn't control, not really. It was barely survival, but it slowed her brain just enough for the next step. Find a target. Below her stretched a massive sweep of wilderness, thick forests, jagged rocky slopes, a silver ribbon of river, and shadowy ravines. Any wrong angle would kill her instantly. The river. Too narrow and shallow, the rocks immediate death, a clearing, hard, packed ground, not survivable at terminal velocity, that left only the trees, a dense forest canopy layered with old growth pines, needles thick as steel bristles, branches like wooden spears. Terrifying, ugly, brutal, but out of everything below, it was the only thing that might break her fall in stages rather than all at once. She angled her arms, shifting her weight, letting her body cut sideways through the oncoming air like a blade. The wind shoved back, resisting her, but she fought harder, pushing toward the green, shadowy mass of trees. Each correction sent a jolt of pain through her shoulders, but she refused to stop. Every second she spent aligning her trajectory increased her odds. Every meter she drifted away from bare ground bought her another heartbeat of life. Her teeth clenched as the forest grew larger beneath her. The branches were clearer now, ragged claws reaching up to tear her apart. She'd seen what high-speed impacts into trees did to paratroopers. It wasn't pretty. Survival required perfection, positioning, and luck, three things she didn't have enough of, but she'd make do. As she closed in, her training filled in the gaps, arms across chest. Chin down, knees slightly bent, brace for rotational impact. She crossed her arms hard over her chest and slammed into the first tree. The branch cracked across her ribs like a bat, knocking the air from her lungs. She spun, crashing into another branch that scraped deep across her thigh. Pain exploded everywhere, but it was slowing her. That was all that mattered. Each collision was agony, but each one stole speed from her lethal descent. Another branch whipped her shoulder, snapping backward with such force she heard cartilage grind. She ricocheted off a trunk, bark tearing open her forearm. Then another branch caught her backpack straps, yanking her so violently she thought her spine might snap. But it slowed her even more. She fell the last 10 feet like a rag doll and slammed into the forest floor. A dull thud, a blinding flash of white behind her eyes, then darkness. Brief but total. She gasped awake minutes later, every rib screaming, breath jagged and shallow. Her vision blurred, then slowly steadied. Pine needles clung to her hair. Blood trickled down her arm. She tasted iron, but she was alive. Against all odds, against gravity, against betrayal, alive. She lay there, staring up at the distant patch of sky. She thought of the 3 rangers who shoved her, their faces, their fear, their guilt, their twisted satisfaction. They thought she was gone, buried by altitude and physics. Another accident in the wilderness. That was their mistake. Using a broken branch for leverage, she forced herself onto her knees, breath ragged but determined. The forest swayed around her, but she pushed herself to stand. Her legs trembled. Her chest felt like it had been caved in, but anger, cold, focused, alive, burned brighter than the pain. They had left her to die, and now she knew exactly what she would do. She would climb out of this forest. She would reach them before they flew off, and she would learn why they pushed her, because betrayal of this scale had roots deeper than jealousy or ego. Someone wanted her gone. She wasn't gone, not even close. The forest clung to her like a second skin as Mara pushed forward, limping, bleeding, but unbroken. Every breath felt like glass cutting into her ribs. Every step sent wires of pain down her leg, but she kept moving. The sun had risen fully now, burning through the treetops and revealing just how far she had fallen. Branches lay snapped in her wake, bark torn off in strips, a scar through the canopy that marked the impossible. She had survived what was designed to kill her. She listened as she walked, boots sinking into moss, twigs cracking, birds scattering overhead. No voices, no radio chatter, just the persistent hum of wind moving through the forest. But in the distance, yes, a faint mechanical whine, helicopter rotors idling in a slow rhythm. They hadn't left yet. Good. Using a tree trunk for balance, she dragged herself up a small ridge. Each movement, calculated, deliberate, drew from her last reserves of strength. She ignored the nausea rolling under her ribs, the dizziness tugging at her vision, and the warm trickle of blood down her arm. Pain was temporary. Justice wasn't. As she crested the ridge, she saw them. The Black Hawk sat on a flat, rocky stretch of ground. The 3 rangers gathered beside it, laughing, smoking, pacing in restless circles. They looked like men who had done something they weren't proud of, but were desperate to believe in their own story. The leader tossed his cigarette aside. "No shoot," he said. "No chance in hell," she lived. "It's done. You sure the trackers are off?" Another asked. "Off." Recorded as malfunction. She jumped. Shoot failed. End of report. The youngest didn't speak. He stared at the ground, shoulders shaking slightly. His guilt had been obvious before. Now it was eating him alive. Mara stepped out from the tree line. None of them noticed at first. She walked with the slow, terrifying calm of someone with nothing left to fear. A phantom that refused to die. Her uniform hung in tatters, bits of pine needles lodged in her hair, dried blood streaked across her cheek. She looked like she had been carved out of the wilderness itself. The young ranger was the first to see her, his face drained white. "Oh my God!" The others turned. Shock struck them like a bullet. One stumbled backward, another grabbed for his sidearm on instinct. The leader simply froze, disbelief twisting into horror. "No," he whispered, "that's not possible." Mara stopped 5 feet from them, breathing steady, eyes cold. "You chose the wrong ranger to throw out of a bird." No one moved. Even the helicopter's rotors seemed to hold their breath. She didn't shout, she didn't rage, she didn't need to. Her presence, the fact she was standing, breathing, alive, was a louder threat than anything she could scream. The leader regained enough courage to grab his weapon. Bad choice. She moved before he could aim, her body fueled by a mixture of rage and precision. Pain flared in her ribs, but she shoved it aside. Her hand struck his wrist, sending the gun skidding across the ground. A swift knee to his stomach folded him. She spun, sweeping his legs out, and he collapsed, Gasping, the second man charged, but she pivoted, using his momentum against him. A shoulder throw sent him crashing into the dirt. His breath left him in a strangled gasp. The youngest didn't fight. He dropped his weapon immediately and raised shaking hands. I didn't want to. They told me. They told me to. Mara grabbed him by the front of his uniform. Who told you? Tears welled in his eyes. Not us. Not personal. We were ordered from high up. Who? She demanded. He swallowed hard. Your commander. So that was it. A targeted elimination disguised as an accident. Executed by cowards too afraid to do the job themselves. Mara released the young ranger and stepped back. The leader groaned, trying to crawl away. She pressed her boot onto his back, pinning him. You tried to bury me with gravity, she said, her voice low and lethal. You should have made sure I couldn't climb back up. Moments later, the quick reaction team arrived, alerted by the helicopter's unplanned landing. When they saw Mara standing over 3 incapacitated rangers, they didn't see a victim. They saw the elite soldier who survived the impossible, exposed a conspiracy, and walked back from death fueled by sheer will. The men were taken into custody, the truth was recorded, and Mara, broken ribs, bruised spine, bleeding arms, refused the stretcher. She walked out herself. Later, when reporters whispered about the legend of the ranger who survived a fall without a parachute, Mara responded the same way she always did. They didn't push me out. They set me free.